I want to demonstrate now the easiest way of installing Py4Web. The way we use in class is to clone the Git repository containing the source. But the simplest way is to install it via pip. To do that, I begin by creating a Python environment in which to install it, so that we isolate the set of packages we use for Py4Web from all other packages. So I say conda create, I use conda python. Name, I can call it Py4Web-demo. This is the name of the environment I'm going to create. And I'm choosing Python 3.7. I think 3.8 would also work. So this creates the environment. Okay, and next I activate the environment. So now I'm in the base environment. I want to go into my newly created Py4Web demo environment. Okay, there. Now I can install Py4Web simply via pip install Py4Web. And this will install the Py4Web package and also all the dependencies. So it takes a moment. Okay. Done. I can ask which Py4Web, and it tells me where it is. Okay, this works well. Now, a web server is not very useful if it has nothing to serve. And Py4Web works in this way. When you run it, it wants to have a directory that contains many applications, I mean one or more applications that you want to serve. Think at every application as a website. Essentially, Py4Web is capable of managing multiple websites, and each website will be a directory inside a general application directory. So I start by creating the general directory. I follow the convention of calling it apps. And initially it's empty. And if you look at the instructions here, you can use this line to copy there some default applications, something that I highly recommend that you do. Py4Web setup apps. Okay, and this asks us, do we want the documentation application? This is an application that can run locally and display to us the documentation for Py4Web. I think that's a good idea. So let's do it. Do we want to have the scaffold app? This is quite an important app because it's a sort of prototypical app that you can then customize. It contains already the place where to connect to a database, methods for logging in, logging out, all the classical definitions that we will need for development. So we do want to have this sort of example app there. The dashboard app, we will run it in a moment. It's incredibly useful. It enables you to examine all the apps you have, and it enables you to examine the database content, and it enables you to edit the code of any of the apps. So it's a sort of master app. If you were in a production website, you may not want to install it because it's quite powerful and it could be a security risk if you don't configure it properly. But here, being a development setting, we do want it. The minimal app, instead, is the smallest possible source configuration for a web app. It's a sort of the blank slate from which you can start to create your own application. If you wanted to start from minimal definition so that you can customize it in any way you want, you may want to have it. And so let's install that as well. And the default app is, I'm not quite sure actually, I never use it. So if we do a listing of apps, okay, there is dashboard, default, documentation, minimal, and scaffold. They have been installed. Now, unfortunately, you need to do something more. You need to create an init file in the apps directory, because Python is quite unhappy if you try to load code from a directory that does not have an init file in it. So we need to say touch apps/init.py. this touch simply means create a file and leave it empty, which is just what we need. Okay, so we need this small extra step. At this point, we want to set up a password. The password will be used for the dashboard. Since the dashboard is powerful, it's locked by a password, and we have to define a password once and for all. So we say, I'm following this line of the documentation here. We say Py4Web set password. Okay, and we have to enter a password twice, as usual. At this point, we should be able to run. Let's see whether it works. Py4Web run, and then I have to tell it where is the folder that contains my applications, which is the apps folder I just created here. So I say apps. And if I do this, it magically works. Okay, you don't see very much, but essentially this means the following. That the dashboard app will be available at this URL. So in fact, let's look at it. I just cut and paste the URL here. Okay. So the dashboard is running here. I have to give it my password again. Okay. So let us look at this message. It tells us that it has loaded the dashboard, documentation, default, minimal, and scaffold app. Then it is giving us these errors. 404 means a page not found. These are not important errors. It tells us that the favicon is missing. The favicon is the name of that small symbol that should be here. You see, it should be this small rectangle here. That essentially is an icon for the site you have created. Okay, these various applications don't have an icon, but we do not particularly need an icon in order to work. Okay, and if we look at the dashboard, this tells us which apps we have. There is a dashboard in which we are, the minimal, default, scaffold, and the documentation one. Let's look at the minimal app just for the fun of it. And you see it contains a single init file, and if we look in it, it just tells us hello world if we go to it. Okay, we can look also at the routes. It tells us that it defines only the minimal index site. Okay, and if we go to it, let me open in another tab, it tells me hello world. Okay, this means essentially that we are running it correctly.